recording. Thank you, weird lady. She's like the Zoom version of Siri. Okay, so let's check in from last week. Rita, you were still working on picking between your novel ideas or figuring out which one's gonna work.
I'm still working on it.
So are you actually writing two different things? Like you'll work on one day and then another?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, yeah.
I hear you.
That's
Cool.
what I'm having trouble with.
I get it. And neither one pulls on you more than the other. They both kind of.
They both kind of do. One I started a while back and I'm kind of dusting it off, so it's a little farther along. And I thank God I had written down a lot of it back when. So I'm able to pick it up again and kind of revise it. The other one was the one I started last time, the two pandemics, but just going with the one that's more just like a little bit in the future and see how that goes.
I like
yeah,
that one.
because I got kind of an idea of her being kind of a real bitchy Jane Eyre kind of type.
I love that.
So I really want to play around with that character. So I got, yeah.
Good. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're writing. That's really the most important part. Natani, you were just going to keep writing, but anything to report about what you've been writing or how?
Mostly fiction. Wrote a whole Chanel chapter, part of which you will hear today.
Yay.
Figured out her relationship with horses and how she got them and all that fun stuff. And I started a piece of nonfiction to go with that book that is happy, mostly. Ooh. Yeah, like I decided to make a whole chapter and essay about the good stuff with the kids.
Yeah.
And like how pleasant that was, because there's so much like,
yes,
the social worker sucked and the lawyer sucked and this sucked and this adult sucked, but the kids were the good part. Everybody thinks that's the hard part of foster care, but it really wasn't.
You know what? That'll be a nice counterbalance throughout if you can keep those moments alive. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's a reason you're doing it all, and it's not because it's all misery. Yeah.
Right.
I love
I'm
that.
a glutton for punishment.
There is, yeah, right. I mean, maybe both. Okay, good. Yana, you were figuring out the voice of your character. How's that going?
Sort of happened, sort of not happened, and then I wrote something else.
In process? That's
process.
You did say figuring out is, that doesn't mean you'd have it all nailed down. Good. I just like to hear that everyone is writing. Sajna, you were trying to build more conflict into an existing chapter. Did you have any luck?
Yeah, I just threw in an obstacle course.
I love that. No obstacle course. Yeah. Awesome, great. And Martha, you were going to switch it up and write 100 words on book 2.
Yeah, and I didn't do my word count check, but I'm certain I probably got about 200 words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. All right. So when you walked away from the screen, Martha, what I decided we would talk about, since you're the only one who sent me a question, and I'll be honest, I just don't have my grammar hat on today, was talking about.
I teach a grammar class, so if you have any grammar questions, everybody
grammar girl. I love that. In fact, you should guest teach one for me.
Absolutely.
That would be fun. I said that what I was interested in us having a brief discussion about was how we go about drafting our novels, to find out a little bit about what our process is like, where we get stuck. And then if anyone's interested, there's an interesting site I had stumbled upon in some lesson planning of various plot structures that we have never really talked through, like the hero's journey. And we don't have to go in depth, but I can just show you like what the beats are. The hero's journey, the old Freytag's pyramid. There's one called the meta plot, which I thought was interesting. And we could just briefly look at them because they're useful for, she keeps walking away when I'm talking to her. Somebody demands her attention. Anyways, that's what we'll do in just a minute when Martha returns. But while we're waiting, so what I think I'd like to know is, let's kind of go around and just tell me a little bit about how you approach writing your book. Are you a planner who's got an outline? Are you writing like whatever scene comes to mind? If you've got multiple characters, do you, each time you sit down, you take the next character? Does anybody want to start sharing their process? I was thinking about you, Rita, dancing between 2 projects, and Natani, you too. What is your process like? All right, well, Rita, since oh, sorry, I saw your hand go up, Natani. Would you like to go
Alright.
first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I always start with a phrase. It's always some line that pops into my head, and with the case of fiction, it's some character telling me their story.
Mm,
But it always starts with a line that catches me, and then I write it down, and then it just comes out. And then when it's nonfiction, when it's my own, it's also usually a line or a thought that I've had about what happened. Um, and sometimes that line will just sit there for months. And then I'll kind of just sit up in the middle of the night and
yeah.
it'll finish itself. But
It-
I don't plan until I've got a
I-
bunch written.
Okay, that makes sense. So once you start getting these, like hearing their voices talk to you, does a plot start to outline itself, or are you still making your way there?
Like I have this one short story that is almost done that I started a decade ago called The Goldfish. And it's about this stay-at-home mom who's slowly being driven insane by her family goldfish. And or she thinks that's what it is.
I love it.
And that just started because I just pictured this goldfish going bloop in a bowl, and it started driving her nuts. So she started processing how they got it, and then this whole thing just came out. So it's sometimes it's usually with me just a thought, and I always feel like I'm not telling the stories. It's the same thing when I write songs. They just kind of come from somewhere. So I
Mhm.
try not to plan, but I'm finding with this book I have to plan because I've got so many protagonists and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
like with this Chanel thing, I started getting really confused about how many kids she had and what were their names. How old were they? And I'm like, oh, I gotta write all this down. And
I
then
was
I'm so
gonna
glad
say
that Martha was talking about
the
like
scene
laying
inventory.
everything out and doing that inventory, because I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to keep track of everybody. So I'm kind of
Yep.
gonna have to do something different than I normally do.
Yeah, I was thinking you could keep a file for each one of like their facts, their history, their foibles, like a little character sketch sheet that has their pertinent information. And you might also want to do something where you can start to visualize their narrative arcs, whether that's a scene inventory or you just, when I do an outline, I do a word-based rough outline. Like I'm not doing like Roman numerals and crap like that. It's not bullet pointed. It's just like a narrative outline of what scenes I think, what I think the story's going to look like. And then I just kind of take it scene by scene. And sometimes I'll write a scene that's forward in time, and sometimes I'll come back, and fill them in. There's always, for me, I'm always filling scenes in as I go. Like, cause sometimes a scene that happens 2 weeks from now, and you just,
Right.
it's in your head. So you write it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, good. So Rita, since I had called on you last, do you want to talk a little bit about your process?
Sure.
You get stuck.
Tanya, I laughed my ass off when you were talking about the goldfish. You've got to finish that story.
Mhm.
That was too
It's
good.
almost
I'm
done.
sorry.
Totally.
Almost done.
Oh, golly. Well, for me, it's been rough because I tend to work 2 jobs. I think I've always done freelancing to keep my byline up, and then I work a full-time job. So in between all that, I tended to do short stories because I could draft it and work on a draft and have a quicker result and get it
Mhm.
published. So when I was in grad school, I did manage to do a screenplay. And what I did with that, which actually was like in the top 10% of the Steven Spielberg just a film contest once.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I remember that I had a concept, I had the characters, and I wrote what I thought were the most compelling scenes, the things that compelled me to write the story to begin with. That way, then I could add the kind of the muscles in the network to get from the scene to scene. And screenplay writing was good because you got a structure to work with. The novels are like you have to invent the structure and the work, so that's been very difficult for me.
That's true.
I tend to also get like the last 2 weeks of finishing the screenplay. I remember I did nothing but eat, sleep, and drink the screenplay. I didn't cook. I went out. I didn't shower practically. It was like I just put everything into finishing it. So for me, I think that's why novels are a little bit more intimidating
They are
because
intimidating.
I'm not used to that kind of a longer term project.
Mhm.
So the ones I started on, the new one I started, I did have enough common sense to go get two different colored index cards because I had the one pandemic story that was set in the past and the one in the
Mhm.
future. And so I wrote out what scenes kind of popped into my mind where I wanted to see it going. And
Good.
I've got that. And then, like I said, this other novel I started a while back. I had an agent interested. I'm so bad. I had agent interested in the screenplay and I dropped the ball. Then agent interested and 2 agents interested in novels and I've dropped the ball. So there you go. Shameful.
Yeah, girl, we got to get you on that again.
I know. It was Nat Sabel too. I have a letter I wrote to him, never sent him. I found it, but
I'm
anyway.
gonna come to your house and send them for
Come and
you.
I know.
I'm coming over there, woman.
The other
Sorry.
guy, I think it was Jano. He was like representing Anne Rice for fuck's sake. Anyway, sorry.
Well,
I'm
I
really-
understand being overwhelmed. I've
Yeah,
had
it's
a
overwhelming.
few moments like that where it's, I don't know if it goes as far as to call it self-sabotage, but it's like you feel like once I take the step, maybe it's all going to happen, and then I'm on the hook for it, and there's this pressure. I know that I can feel pressure, but anyways, I'm still going to shake my finger at you.
Please
Gently,
do.
lovingly.
So I'm struggling with that, but like I said, I'm really glad it is self-sabotage. I would say definitely for me. And I start to get doubts. Nobody wants to hear of it. I'm too old, blah, blah, blah. So I have to kind of wade through all that. In the meantime, I guess I would say the characters just start to bubble up when I start to work on it. And I start to get all of these characters and then I start to struggle to find a structure for it. So that's kind of hard to like
Okay,
keeping
so
propelling the story and trying to like on the other hand keep an eye on what kind of structure do I want for this.
yeah,
When
I
do you
think
do
maybe the plot structure thing will be useful. Yeah, Natani.
Oh, question for Rita. When you did the screenplay, did you use a program or did you just write it?
There was, I think this was like back in 2000 or the 90s. So I had a computer.
Yeah.
I worked on a computer, but I just wrote it out.
Yeah, because there are some people in Indian country that are already starting to talk about what I'm writing, and I've sent it out to a couple other native writers, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is lovely, but books don't sell. Make this a screenplay too." So
Yeah,
I'm
you
trying
could
to
both.
write both because there are some Netflix is working with 2 different
Oh, damn, that's not a
houses
bad
that are,
idea.
like
Not a bad idea.
doing
Not a
stuff
bad
like this right
idea.
now. So
Screenplays are very structured. So if you want to talk about that, let me know.
You all you
I
really
will.
have to
I've
do
written
is write.
plays, but I've never done a screenplay before. So
I
would-
liked it. It's really fun. I think
You-
all of the people were in this class to me, you're so visual and you're so
Yeah.
vivid.
Ooh,
Anybody
maybe
could
we
write
need
a screenplay.
maybe we need a screenwriters
That would be
person to come talk to us.
Yes, please.
Because actually I took a screenwriting class once, just like a workshop at a conference, maybe like a 3-hour workshop. It was so enlightening. And it was actually helpful to me just as a fiction writer, regardless. So I definitely think that'd be an interesting idea. And all you would need to write is a pilot and with an idea. Just to pitch it to something like Netflix, you would just need a pilot and then what kind of like treatments on what some of the future, but I think you can get away with that. Okay, well, Martha's gone again. Yana, she comes back. Martha, tell us a little bit about your process and any sticking points for you.
Okay, I apologize for getting up. My husband has a drum Zoom lesson,
Goodness.
and I have to help him. He can't do anything with the computer. But anyway,
Great.
I've been trying for about 6 years to figure out this story and rewriting it and making significant changes. And so this is my first real baby that I've completed. I'm very much just a pantser and a gardener.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm starting the sequel, I'm a lot more confident in where I'm going and what I'm doing. And in my mind, I just see like a string of these scenes, the big hot moments. And they're just like, just reaching for those scenes, how we do. And as I write, I also outline at the same time. Just if I'm not feeling inspired to write, I'll fiddle with my outline.
Yeah, I do that. I often recommend writing scene placeholders if you're stuck, like you just don't have the energy to write, but you kind of like just summarize what you think should happen next to yourself as if you're just making notes. And then at least you have it down so that when you do have the energy to write, it flows. For me, that's helpful. I'm like, oh, look, I wrote what I'm supposed to write next. Now I can just listen to myself.
And I want to get that book that I read the book you wrote about the different kind of scenes. I think the deep scene, but I need to own that book, because now I'm thinking I really want to reflect on how to categorize each scene. Is it a reflective scene? Is it etc.
Yeah.
That, to me, that really helps me to see it like this big like symphony of action.
Yes.
And everything should there should always be accents and
Yes.
whatnot. So.
Yeah, I feel like this is all the higher level stuff you learn to do after you master like just getting a story told. It's like how do I make sure the story is, really sings, really, like, when you finish a novel and you're like, how'd they do that? They pulled it all full circle, and then that clue added up, and that theme resonated. I'm like always, so it doesn't matter how much I read or how much I write, I'm still always in awe when some writer has just, and what I know is that they had an editor tear that book apart for them and tell them how to put it back together. Because I read acknowledgments. I always read the acknowledgments of writers' books, and they will always thank the people who helped them. And 9 times out of 10, thanks to my editor so-and-so, without her, this book would have been something completely different. I never would have found my vision. I'm like, see, writers need to understand that it's not like you just finish a draft and it's done and perfect. Like, it should give you a sense of freedom a little bit to say, yeah, I'm going to write the best book I can write. And then I'm also going to get some feedback and I'm going to improve it based on that. So, well, good. Thank you, Martha. That's really, I'm also a pantser, but I'm trying to become more of an outliner, because pantsing, I end up in plot holes. I end up in these either plot binds that don't make sense or with holes I can't fill. So
I'm going to your side too, because I'm thinking about its structure. At the very end of the day, you want to have a solid house.
Yes. And it's hard. And sometimes it really does take till the second or later drafts to figure it out. But if you start thinking about it at some point, it will make a difference. So good. Yana, do you want to talk a little bit about your process?
Is chaos a process?
Yes, it is.
Because that is my process. Any scene comes to me just out of nowhere for no reason. I can't, sometimes I'm looking at a photo of something, or I'm just looking outside and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if this thing happened. And then the whole story just like falls.
Yeah. I mean, to be inspired like that is amazing, honestly.
It just happens. And then I come to like a block, like I've stopped, like that's all I can do right now. And then I jump to somewhere else, and then I'm like, oh, this is how I do this thing. And everything just unravels itself. It's like unraveling a sweater, but in a good way.
I like it. Yeah. And I admire people who can write like that, where they just piece it together over time and then it just somehow magically comes together. And sometimes that might just be the way your brain works, or the way your story flows, like that you don't have to write this linear thing. For me, I think what matters most is that you write. If you're in a writing mode, it's ideal to write every day if you can, because it keeps you plugged into the story. It doesn't mean you have to write the next piece, but like the novel that I've been drafting, which, it's a really, really raw draft, but even like days I missed a day, when I'd come back to it, I was like, wait, where am I? What's going on? So that's something to consider. All right. Thanks, Yana. Sajna, how about you?
I'm still evolving my writing style. I'm a pretty organized person in real life, but I think when I took to writing, for some reason I was haphazard and all over the place. And it took me a while to understand that if I wrote like that, I'm not getting anywhere. Like I have a chapter here and I have a chapter there, but I don't have a book. I don't have a story. If I'm writing fantasy and I'm writing YA, I can't function like that. So I think I've gotten more organized over the years. And yeah, it is pretty hard. That's what I realized.
Yeah, it is.
It is pretty challenging. I didn't think it was this hard, but I'm trying to approach it one day at a time, and hopefully it works out.
Yeah. Well, I think this is why I've come to really love plot structure, because if I can conceive of my book as parts rather than one big whole, then I can write the parts and then stack them together, which is why I think this little brief overview here, let me find the website again. I really like, despite the fact that it's called The Hero's Journey, Heroine's Journey. I like the hero's journey structure, even though I've never been able to actually write exactly to it. What I use most of all is Martha Alderson's basically 4 energetic markers structure as my backbone, which she writes about in The Plot Whisperer, and then we reference in Writing Deep Scenes. But because just 4 pivotal points, and then in between you're like, okay, these are the character has to change and be ready for each of these 4 pivotal points. It kind of gives me a guideline. So I break my book essentially into 4 parts if I can. But here, let me pull this up. Okay, get down to the hero's journey. Where's the graphic? I have a cute little graphic somewhere. So in fact, so this comes originally from like the work of Joseph Campbell, who was a mythologist. So that, I with a grain of salt, everything I give you with a grain of salt, like there are variations on a theme. And what I like is there's a book called The Writer's Mythic Journey by Christopher Vogler, who's mentioned here. And he breaks down the hero's journey. And he's actually a screenwriter, and he breaks down the hero's journey in this thick book. It's really, really useful if you want to really get an overview of plot structure like never before. It's thick, but it's really compelling. And he references movies rather than books, but it's all the same. Story structure is all the same, really. So in the hero's journey, which most blockbuster movies like fantasy movies or, action movies actually follow this to some degree. You start out, we've talked about inciting incident, right? So you start out with a character in what they call the ordinary world, which is just their life before the inciting incident happens. And, for me, I like this. It's good to set this world up as a state of like, what are the pressures? What are the problems that your character is living with before the inciting incident takes place? So it shouldn't just be boring, like, this is my character walking to school. This is my character brushing their teeth. But you're sort of setting us up to understand who your character is. You're kind of introducing them in the world that they live in before this fracture happens. And then they call the inciting incident the call to adventure. And that's the hero's ordinary life is interrupted when someone or something gives them an opportunity to go on a quest. I take issue with this because not every story is a quest. And that's why I sometimes call it just a call to change. Something happens to your protagonist that forces them to change. He says in Star Wars: A New Hope, the call to adventure occurs when Luke sees the message from Leia to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he suddenly wants to help her. And then we get to this point after your protagonist embarks upon this journey, they're going to hit a point where they don't want to keep going forward. And Martha refers to that as the, we don't even call it that. So the refusal of the call, it then leads to something which we call like the recommitment or the rededication, right? So the refusal of the call is the moment where your protagonist is like, I don't know if I can proceed on this path. It's too hard. It's too scary. I don't have enough resources. And they have to kind of find a way forward, even though they are afraid. And then, so the mentor is usually what they seek out in order to help them build that confidence, that wiser, more experienced person who gives them advice and guidance. The mentor trains and protects the hero until he is ready to embark on the next phase of the journey. Again, this is very granular. I don't recommend that you have to have this exact level of detail. And sometimes the mentor is actually your own character's higher wisdom or an experience they have that shows them they can do it. And then they cross the threshold. So this is where we call the energetic markers that Martha talks about can be called thresholds. So this threshold is when we move into the middle, so he really stretches out. Like, I feel like in the hero's journey, crossing the threshold is the inciting incident, and it's like 5 points down. So that seems really long to me. I feel like you should get there sooner, but something to consider. But when they leave behind the ordinary world, it's new, it's either exciting or scary, right? And then they enter the deep part of the middle, which is where tests, allies, and enemies. So things get hard. They meet their antagonists. The antagonists could be opposing forces, society, themselves, or villains. and they get challenged. And this is the hardest part of most novels, I think, is how to sustain your characters through those challenges, you know, of the middle. And I think it's helpful to think of them as highs and lows. So they have challenges, then they have moments of, you know, success and resilience, then they have hardship, then they have, you know, so it kind of looks like a little staircase in my mind. And that takes us all the way up to what we would start to consider the crisis. But here he's got this prior to the crisis, approach of the innermost cave. So this is where the hero prepares to face some big challenge. And they are often isolated. They're often finding themselves alone. Maybe people have abandoned them, betrayed them. They might have made a decision they regret, and that precedes the crisis, or what he calls the ordeal. So the ordeal is the low point where it seems like all is lost for the protagonist and nothing will ever be good again. And there might be a death, there might be a stripping away of illusion. And it's the darkest night of the soul that, you know, ultimately, oh, see, once again, I'm wondering if he calls the crisis. So out of the crisis, the protagonist should emerge stronger and ready to essentially build to the climax, which is where they survive, they overcome and achieve their goal, but it is usually a hard-won goal, painful, costs them something, but they also have transformed from someone who at the beginning of the story could not have overcome that challenge, but into somebody who is ready for that challenge. So there's a lot of emotional transformation that's taken place. And then after the ordeal or the crisis or the climax, I guess, no, I guess the climax is later. Yeah. So after the ordeal, they get a reward of some kind, the love of a romantic interest, a supernatural power, or a physical prize, and they start to head back to the ordinary world. But before they do, then in this structure, then they have to hit the climax, which is that big overcoming. And then they return with the elixir, which is some prize again. Literal potion or gift may take the form of the hero's newfound perspective on life. So if you ever wanted to sort of map out your story and see if it fits into these 12 beats, it's definitely interesting and worth exploring. And it's a story structure we're all deeply familiar with because we've been steeped in it all our lives, whether we know it or not. And when I really do recommend Vogler's book, because he breaks it down to such minute detail that, like, there's all these things I had never ever thought about before that I find really interesting. So I highly recommend it. Even if you skim it, it's worthy investment. So then there was this little shorty one. Yeah, so like they broke down the hero's journey in The Hobbit here. You can, I can send this link to you guys. You can take a look through them. But the other one I wanted to look at, and they have other examples of hero's journey plot structure here. There's actually quite a lot of information at this site, but the one I wanted to pull up is really short. Not there. Where is it? Must be up higher. There. Oh yeah, this little meta plot. So this is from a book called The 7 Basic Plots from Christopher Booker. I don't know. So his plot has 5 stages. The anticipation stage, in which the hero prepares to embark on adventure. That's kind of like the ordinary world. The dream stage, in which the hero overcomes a series of minor challenges and gains a sense of confidence and invincibility. The frustration stage, in which the hero confronts the villain. The nightmare stage, in which the hero fears they will be unable to overcome their enemy, and the resolution, in which the hero finally triumphs. So that's kind of an interesting short, that might be more useful to some of you, just like a short way to approach it. And I do like to think of books, whether you think of them in acts or parts, I recommend you kind of think about actually breaking it down for yourself in the drafting phase. So act 1, part 1, and then really look at how your character is changing up to each part. So when you move into the second part after act 1, you know, who are they now? What do they need to learn? What challenges will they overcome at this section? How will it change them? And then, you know, think of each transition between the acts as a pivotal moment where your character has to essentially really kind of come through that threshold, changed in some way, even if it's just a small way. And then good old fashioned Freytag's pyramid is like what you learned in high school, probably. And it's not bad either. You've got, although I argue with the exposition section, we don't do so much exposition anymore. It's not as in contemporary writing, but exposition, right, is the beginning where you basically lay the ground. Who are these characters? What are their lives like before things happen? Then there's an inciting incident that begins, the rising action where everything starts to get more complicated. It builds to a climax. And then after the climax, there's falling action, which is where you tie up all the plot threads, and then denouement, which is basically ending it. What I don't like about this is there's no crisis. There's no like Dark Knight. There's no, it's just like all rising. But you could essentially, you could throw the crisis in here, right? It could just be considered rising action. So I don't know if these are helpful to you. Let me put this in the chat in case any of you want to look at it.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
Where is the best place for the twist? Because I have a twist right in the middle, and I'm hoping that's a good spot. That's where it came.
I mean, there can be many, first of all, there can be many twists. You can have many small twists at the end of every act. But if you, okay, huge twist.
Yes.
You can do, so, you know, if you're going energetic markers, right? If we've got 4 energetic markers, at each marker, you have an opportunity for a twist. Or if you're going to do 3 acts. So if you think of the first act, point of no return or inciting incident, then you've got the midpoint of your middle is a very good place for a twist. Or crisis or climax points can also be good points. I would say about every quarter of your book gives you an opportunity for a twist or a plot revelation. So if you, that's why I like breaking it into 4 parts, the beginning, the emerging middle, the deeper middle, the end. It helps because then that's almost 4 equal parts. It's not really, but we can pretend. The middle is the biggest chunk, right? Those 2 sections. But also if you break the middle into 2 parts, then your first half of the middle is more explorative and the second half is more getting into trouble, shit happens, if that makes sense, right? So like I was just listening to, I've been audio booking a lot, and there's a series that I absolutely adore by Maggie Stiefvater, who's a young adult writer, but her books are not childlike at all. And I was realizing that not a lot happens in the way of like huge plot events, but like the climax kind of happens toward the end, but it was still engaging me because of the characters. And I mean, they do have challenges, but they're not like huge plot events. And I was like, well, I just read a whole book that didn't have a bunch of huge plot events and it still gripped me. You know, it's the characters and they have a lot of internal conflict, and interpersonal conflict. So even though it's like things aren't happening in terms of the plot, there's a lot happening inside them. So that's another way you can keep tension alive in your story if your plot is not like hugely dramatic. And Natani, I feel like your story is very character driven. So you may not have a bunch of huge plot events. Your plot events might be more internal and awareness shifts and epiphanies and, you know, so you'll really be looking for that character emotional transformation like that. That's how I would be charting your story. It's like, what are the moments at which they really kind of start to change emotionally? What information leads to that? What events help to speed that along? But I really do recommend trying to break your story into parts if you can. But you know, but if you have a process that's just working for you, there's no reason to change it up, you know? So anyone else have thoughts on plot structure or structure at all before we break and then read? Or any other questions that have kind of popped up or thoughts? Yeah, Natani?
I have a question about flash fiction.
Yeah.
What's the criteria? Like how long is it no longer flash fiction?
So, you know, it's funny, they say 1,000 words is flash fiction, but I've always felt like flash fiction is like 500 or less, but up to 1,000 words, a lot of places will accept that as flash. Okay. But if you're submitting anywhere, definitely check out their guidelines because like places like might have even shorter requirements. And what's interesting about flash fiction is how it completely departs from a lot of the rules of other fiction. You know, it's like that's one of the things I love about it is it can be so interesting and experimental. And it doesn't have to have a beginning, middle, and an end. You know, like sometimes flash fiction feels like it's the middle of something and only the middle or the beginning of something. And that's what I love about it is it's like a little fiction explosion or something. Yeah, but it's great. That reminds me that there's a great publication called Smoke Long Quarterly that I used to read and have published in. You might check them out. They're online. I don't know that they pay anything though. And Brevity is another one. I don't know if does Brevity only publish nonfiction? I'm not sure, but they do flash nonfiction. There's one other, I'll think of some others. I think it's easier to publish short fiction, honestly.
Mhm.
But one day it would be fun for you to just do a search of literary journals and just start looking through them, because there's lists online and most of them have online presences. But I would definitely say that at some point you should start submitting, even if you just submit scenes or chapters from your book, because a lot of it feels like it stands alone.
I've got one piece that's like what I was thinking of. Like, I can't decide if it's flash
Yeah.
or not. That's very short. It's this girl, she's trapped in her bedroom and there's a strange man in her closet while she's
Ooh.
getting ready. So she has to pretend that she doesn't know he's there. Yana's read it. She has to pretend she doesn't know he's there so she can get the fuck out of the room and not die. And so it's really condensed, but I'm not sure it's short enough to be flash. So
yeah, it might just be like a short story,
yeah, it's just for my short stories are usually longer than
I know, I understand. Well, and sometimes a short story is like 40 pages, depending on the publication.
right.
Or like a book, if you read someone's collection of stories, sometimes one will be really long. Yeah, so I understand that. Yeah, so, but I like the idea of a screenwriter coming to talk to us next session. Okay, well, let's take a really quick break so I can see how my son's second shot went, and then we will do our open mic, and then we'll talk about when we want to start up the next session. Okay, I'll be right back, like 3 minutes. How did it go, my child? Was it a better guy than?
Well, first we looked at all
because they look the exact same.
and then sit there and say, she's out. Pissed me off because he was great. We got really slow people driving. So Dad dropped a string of F-bombs as loud as he could.
Yeah, and it didn't make this situation.
She was twice as fast.
Part of the idea of where it's like you're opening brackets.
What about it?
I can't remember who I heard this from, but it's like thematic elements. Like, say you bring up, okay, this is one idea. It's like opening a bracket.
Oh.
And then you have to close the bracket, and that's the resolution of the idea.
Oh, interesting.
Brackets in there
As a way of plotting?
as a way to To conceptualize it, yeah.
Conceptualize. I like that idea. Yeah, and one of the things I find myself doing when I go back through my drafts is I'm always like, I make these little asterisks by things that are things I have to tie up and make sure I carry through, because it's like I dropped that here, but did it ever get resolved?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to hold that in your head. But yeah, so I use little notes to myself within my document so I can find those things when I go back through. But
The small plot lines, the ones that.
Yeah, the subplots and then you're like, oh wait, I thought that guy was the bad, the one who did that or whatever. It's hard. Sometimes even I feel like, why do I do this? Why am I doing this whole trying to write novels thing I don't understand? But then they never leave me alone, so that's why.
The 1,000,000-piece jigsaw puzzle.
I know it is. That takes years and years to complete. And has you doubting yourself. I was laughing because I've been going through the draft I wrote to try and fill some holes in, and I was like, pretty much every other day it's like, this is great, this is crap, this is great, this is crap. I'm like, well, I can't be trusted as a judge of my own work, that's for sure. All right, are we all here? So who would like to go first for our open mic? Wait, I feel like I should start. Hey everybody, how are you doing? This is a Fiction Frenzy. We're a group of writers that have been writing together for some time. We're going to read little excerpts from our work. There, now it feels formal. Okay, who's feeling brave and ready?
I'll go ahead and try.
Don't try. Do.
To setting my own timer, so.
Okay,
do that.
Okay.
So that I'll have the countdown.
Good idea. Should I put you on spotlight mode? I think I'm going to spotlight you guys.
Okay, sure. And I'm just going to read from the beginning because I've changed it enough. And A Huldre's Tale by Martha Stromberg. Love will find a way through paths where wolves fear to prey. Lord Byron. Prologue. One day long ago, the Lord came to a woman's cottage. Ashamed she had only washed half of her 12 children, she hid the dirty ones. God declared those hidden would remain forever a secret from humanity. Thus, the Huldre folk came into being. 1660, Trentino, Italy. Chapter 1. 17-year-old Antonio Stradivari, future famed violin maker, clung to an old spruce tree, too shy to look the creature in her eye. He'd read about her kind in books, the Huldre folk, wardens of the forest, protector of the trees. Her dress of weaved rags did little to hide her feminine form, or the long tail sweeping the ground behind her. Better not look directly at it, lest the lady blush and hide, or worse, get angry. And you would not want to anger a Huldre, for they wield powers from beyond our earthly realm. Antonio wondered what she was doing so far from the land of Scandinavia, but she smiled, pouring a nourishing warmth into his heart, casting a deep relaxation over every organ and every bone, until the question did not matter. He had heard they love music, could lure and be lured by pretty melody. And he's heard of the blessings they can give, the magic they possess, the way they talk to trees. His thoughts flew to his creations, il violino. They were the most seductive things of all. Antonio dared to dream, dared to imagine the perfect violin. For that, he would need many blessings. Facing the Huldre, the young violin maker trembled and willed his heart to courage. A summer breeze wafts into my bedroom as Mom runs the vacuum in all corners of Presqu'île Villa, determined to ruin the peace of a Tuscan morning and the beginning of my summer vacation. Mom and her love of cleaning fluids, I'll never understand it. By my guesstimation, she's on her third cup of coffee and anxious to get me going. But I don't want breakfast, and I definitely don't want to help with house cleaning. I'm trying to talk myself down from a panic attack because my best friend and neighbor, Demetrius Helfman, is back home from 7 months in the States, trying to break into the music industry. Less than half a mile of untamed hill country separates our two villas. We share a charming little creek and one perfectly old sugar maple on a gently rising slope. Below plum-colored, star-shaped leaves is a low branch, perfect for sitting and dreaming on. It's where Demetrius and I spent our childhood, sharing every secret, consumed with our never-ending game of the Duke and the Princess. But I'm guilty. I haven't shared my latest secret with him. My latest secret blows all the others away. You see, when my fingers touch certain strange new contours of my body, adrenaline spurts and sputters into my bloodstream like a busted up pipe. The thing started growing about 6 months ago, and now it practically measures the length of my hand. It's all itchy and tingling, and it constantly aches at the base. It hurts to sit, it hurts to stand, and well, it's just so wrong. Why couldn't decent boobs arrive this summer instead? 15 years have left me wanting in the womanhood department. What will Demi think of me now? I whine under my breath. He'll think I'm a freak. Holding the thing, trying to desensitize myself to it, I force myself to feel the full length, from the aching base to the swath of brown hair curling at the tip. Ew, gross. What the heck, God? What the heck? Why? I ask, though I'm doubtful he exists. Checking my phone, no word from Demi since boarding the plane in LAX yesterday. I need to relax. But thinking of our pending reunion sends my heart reeling and racing off the high dive board. I have to work up the nerve to tell him my secret, because one day I'm going to marry him. I drop the thing and grab my violin. I need violin time because playing music is the only way I feel halfway normal these days. I am not just an animal. I am a trained individual, a refined soul. I tell myself, sneaking down the hall, trailing my fingers on the cool clay walls. The purple sweetness of wild lilac greet me through the open casement windows. I walk the perimeter of our cheerful pink salon, enjoying the smell of rosin dust. Father always talked about this idea of silence. He said, first locate the music inside yourself. True music comes from the chambers of the heart, in between the beats. He knew all the secrets of the music intimately, having spent a lifetime as a string maker. So I take a deep breath and listen. Outside, Uncle Toby calls directions to the farmhands, taking the sheep out to the field. A large bumblebee vibrates its passion inside the roses. And then she launches into Flight of the Bumblebee. So I'll stop it there.
Perfect. That's so funny. It was like the sound was made for the story at that point.
How do I call that? Okay, there we go.
Yay! It's so fun. It was fun to hear the different voices between like the sort of narrative voice with Antonio, and then when you dropped into Alora's voice, I could totally tell. It was cool.
Oh, cool. I was trying to affect that.
Yeah, I liked it. Ah, beautiful. How's it feel to read your work out loud?
Oh, nerve-wracking.
It's funny, right? It's like, shouldn't be.
I do it by myself easily enough, but I do get stage fright.
I understand. All right, well, who is brave to go next? My good. Oh, I'll tell you what, person who read gets to pick the next reader.
I do?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
That'll be my
I would love to hear Sajna.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have only 2 paragraphs. Sorry about that. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and read. You'll not throw the stone into the fire, commanded a hollow voice. It was the last obstacle in this doomed house, A nearly 7 foot tall, long haired woman, her body and legs as strong as an oak tree, stood before me. Her eyes were black holes in a bloodless face, and her tongue was long and red, slithering around her face like a snake. She had scorpion claws for hands, fluttering about for something to grab. Her hair, though long and lustrous, swirled around her like a massive thunderstorm, while parts of it formed a train behind her, like a black river. Her voice was a low, guttural, unearthly rasp. I didn't fear ghosts, and yet my heart rattled in my chest as she took a step forward, her eyes getting larger by the minute, and a strange smile, a harbinger of nothing good. A fearless one, are you? Half the humans who came this far would rather jump into the fire than face me. And to think I'm on your side, as she said, even as her long tongue shot out like a scaly snake and smacked my face. I winced. If this was the good guy, I wondered what the bad guys would look like. That is all I managed, really.
Oh, such great descriptions. I love that
you.
final line too. It was like a punch. Wow. Thank you so much. I love that you now, is that something new you wrote, or is that something you pulled out from old?
No, it is something new, but it's still part of the book because I'm trying not to venture into other territory before I do something with what I have.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, thank you so much. All right. Well, you get to pick the next one.
Okay. Yana?
Yana.
I knew it. I knew it. Okay. Okay. I've edited this, so I have no idea if it's 5 minutes, 6 minutes. I don't know anymore. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. Okay. I climbed the wiry metal steps up to the garden. Going up these stairs for me was still a confusing task. My feet longed for knots and trees to use as footholds, branches to grab and ease my way upwards to the sky. But all my hands found was a railing, cold and silent to my touch, smooth and almost silky, as if it was supposed to be looked at rather than used. Decoration, Noreen had called the many sparkling features in Freddie's magical shop. Not for using, she had said to me one afternoon while trying to explain what the floating glowing lanterns I occasionally bonked my head on were for. We have plenty of lights, she said while looking up at one, twirling in the air. They are more for staring at, she turned to me smiling and softly my confused expression. For staring at something bright and wonderful when looking in front of you is too hard. She looked up at the lanterns again, staring like I wasn't even beside her anymore. I had found myself searching for them too. Every now and then, they reminded me of my first day in the sun, the brightness cracking through the dark. Many things in this place didn't have a function, just sat there, looking pretty, polished, but my favorite decoration so far was flowers. The first time I had seen one, Noreen had been walking up and down the street, getting used to the hard stones beneath my feet and their harsh clunk in shoes. I'd spotted out the corner of my eye a bright pink thing flapping in the wind. I'd knelt down to stare at it, its softness enrapturing me. Noreen had been itching to show me the garden on the roof ever since. Garden? I had asked, rolling the word around with my tongue. Yeah, Noreen had said, turning to take us home. You'll love it up there, as long as you don't mind steep stairs. I sadly had minded, and it took me several tries to get all the way up. But Noreen was patient, and now she let me bounce around from table to table, enjoying each encounter with a new flower. I loved inhaling each deep scent of dirt and fluid sweetness that each one seemed to have, the petals tickling my nose, pollen fluttering in the air. Finally, I walked up to the longest table Noreen was working at, scribbling in that small brown notebook she always carried with her. I looked above her and realized the whole wall was covered in deep red flowers, their petals tight, purposeful, elegant, and alluring, almost begging me to touch them. But looking closer at their stems, I saw them, thorns, pointed and sharp-looking, needles. But even they were beautiful too, confident. Roses, Noreen chirped next to me. She stared at me from the side. They're called roses. You like them? She asked, taking in my wide eyes. I nodded. They're the most wonderful thing I've ever seen. I didn't even turn when she had to laugh. They have that effect on people, she said as she pulled open a drawer, rummaging through it, looking for something. I wasn't paying attention. These roses, they called to me. My breathing slowed. I could feel them. Everything seemed to slow down. And as I stared at them, They seemed to breathe with me, pulsing beats from their stems in time with my own heart. Then slowly I saw Noreen's hand reach out, wrapping carefully around a flower. For a second I think she's going to inspect it. But then her other hand came into view. She's holding a gleaming object that I heard her call scissors once. And she's reaching for the flower. She's pulling, leaning in, and I can't help but take a sudden deep breath as her fingers curl around the stem. Before I can breathe out, the twin blades cut and slice through the flower, severing it. The flower falls, and I suddenly hear the screams, the unearthly howling. I wrap my hands around my ears at the sudden noise, but it doesn't deafen. It grows, swells. I drop to my knees. I hear myself scream with it. It's horrific. The screeching is scraping at my ears, burning me inside. It's not human, animal, not harmonious. It is rage, fear, hatred. It is suffering incarnate, and it makes me suffer with it. I'm crying, sobbing. The tears are knives, making hot cuts along my aching cheeks. My sobs hurl my body to the floor. I scream again. They tear my throat apart, ripping it with grief. I grab up my ears, tearing hair out, scraping my skin, making it bleed. This will never stop. Noreen is shocked, scrambling to pull my hands from my face, hairs hanging from my shaking fingers. I look around and find the severed flower. I crawl towards it, bring it to my chest. It smells of something new. A new word comes to me. Death. I'm screaming again. I look up and hone in on the stem, simmering with white-hot energy, with anger. I stare at it as a single drop of white liquid bubbles out of it. A tear of blood. Loss. I keep crying and squeeze the flower in my hand, begging it to breathe again. I hold it so tightly some thorns dig into me. A worthy revenge. I welcome the pain. There is nothing else to do. I cry out to the sky, feeling the life and fight drain out of me. I don't remember when I stopped crying.
Woo, girl. Whew, I got some goosebumps. I love that. I love her. I love how you can make things that we all know seem brand new again, first of all. And I just love that connection she has to the flower that she feels its death. Like, now I feel guilty. All the flowers.
Yeah. I realized recently that flowers actually do feel pain. It's just like they release stuff and smells and, stuff whenever we cut them. So I kept wondering, like, what would they sound like if they could actually scream? Would we cut them if they actually screamed? So I thought I'd just weave that in there a little bit.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, you get to pick your successor.
My mother.
Natalie.
Okay, we get to see if I can figure out how to. Okay. You guys can still see me, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't figure this out. Okay. I probably will slip into an accent because I can't read this without doing it. And content warning, domestic abuse. And swearing. There ain't no safer man than a castrated one. Their urge to hit, kick, choke, bite, or otherwise maim leaves with their urge to fuck. I've known this about horses and dogs since I was a little one, but I didn't learn this about human men until Rodney had to start taking pills for his ticker that took away all his manly desires. Almost overnight, he was no longer trying to put it to me near every day, and neither was he prone to asking questions with the back of his hand. What bitch, always accented by the weathered side of his fury. The callous side of his hands were for work, the back for working me over. Backhanded or closed fist, it was the backs of those hands I feared most. When his pills kicked in, he still hated me the same. He just didn't seem to have the drive to do nothing about it except call me names, and those never stung much coming from his fool mouth. And if he'd have been smarter or quicker, maybe, but watching him struggle with finding the right thing to call me, accuse me of, damn and curse me with, well, that was always entertaining. Then when laughing in his general direction was no longer outright dangerous, well, it was just plain funny. Got to the point where I'd try to help him. You're a real piece of shit whore, you know that? He slurred through a spittled and whiskered mouth. Oh, am I, Rodney? Am I? Well, yesterday I was a dick sucking whore who wasn't worth a shit. So maybe write it down this time so you can keep it straight. You watch your mouth, woman. You'll what, Rodney? Stand up too fast and die? Careful with that ticker, hun. Wouldn't want it to up and walk out on you like your first wife. I'd lost 2 teeth the last time I back talked him like that, but not this time. This time he just sat there, aged beyond his years, broken and limp, those calloused hands turning soft just like his manhood. The backs of those hands I'd feared so much, looking all frail and bony, with spiderweb veins so dried out from meds and beer they all but sunk into his skin. His dying was the best thing he ever did for me, besides give me my babies. Well, most of them. Cheyenne and Lenny are his. Cross is too, though I wasn't sure for a few months. But Teensy is his cousin Jacob's baby, and everyone around here knows it. Jacob is Cherokee through his mama, and Rodney was not. Both his parents white as snow. And Teensy, well, she is the brown-eyed, deer-hided reminder in the end. Rodney couldn't even complete our family without help from his. His family used to help us with everything, from money to watching kids so I could work when he was too drunk or in jail or banged up from losing yet another fight to someone who wasn't a woman and could hold their own. He was never smart enough to know when to shut his mouth and always thought the way he beat me and his first wife was the measure of his toughness, no matter how many times a man reminded him it wasn't. It's not that I never fought back. I just never decked him the way he decked me. I don't have hitting in me. I'll shove a motherfucker away, but I don't hit. Doesn't feel natural. Might have been different if he'd touched one of the kids, but I think he knew that. Nearly 6 feet of me to nearly 6 feet of him still wouldn't have been a fair fight. But if he'd have hurt my kids, I'd have died trying to win. His family was generous and present. His daddy even brought me a truck with a back seat when I was pregnant with Cross. Always a mouthful of chew, and the other side holding a permanent grin. He stood in front of what was his new truck. You can't be towing them kids in that old Chevy. It ain't got enough room for them all now. You just take this. I done broke it in for you. You need the room and tow more than I do. Jackson, it's your new truck. Your truck? You can and you will. Least I can do, Chanel. Least I can do. And he fixed on my swollen eye and then my swollen belly and lowered the brim of his hat and turned away as he welled up with tears. Wouldn't even let me drive him back home. I need me thinking time. They gave us most of our horses too. The kids would reach a certain age or ability level, which would always coincide with some shit Rodney'd pulled, and then out of nowhere, their truck could be heard at the end of our quarter-mile drive, and sure as shit, there'd be a trailer behind it, another pony, another paint, another "I'm sorry we raised up such a horrible pile of garbage" horse. That's why all my kids have paints. They're me, mom, papa, which is fine. I trust paints with kids. Most of them stay kids themselves, playful and sweet, content to be dressed up, braided, ridden bareback, or saddled. My babies have the nicest saddles you'll never see because they never use them. Or they'll simply lay in the shade while my children scramble around them, screaming up the neighbor's tree and down. Lately, Cheyenne has taken to reading on hers, sometimes while they're riding, sometimes laying in a field together. Her teenage rebellion seems to be literary, which is just fine with me. I'd understand sneaking around and drinking more, but at least I know she's safe with her horse and a book. Her mare will lay there all day with her if that's what she wants. It's a team of mares for my babies. Mares know how to take care of a baby, and my mares know that my babies will always be babies. Each of mine got their first ride the day they could sit up, though they'd always been with me when I was caring for my herd. Strapped to a cradle board, laying in a basket, swinging from a tree to keep the shade on them and the snakes off them. When they're tiny, Uzdi is always on me. I've mucked more stalls and baled more hay than I can count with Uzdi strapped to me. Sometimes tit and mouth if it's a chore that ain't too jostling. They're always with me when I'm with my horses until they can't toddle around on their own.
Woo! Yeah, baby. I'm going to talk in an accent. Oh my gosh. Your characters are just fully born. Like every one of those people, I feel like I could go out and meet them somewhere for coffee. I love it. So she your latest one that you've been getting access to?
Yeah, I was, I was, I was slightly annoyed at a man in my life, and the opening line, "Ain't no man safer than a castrated one," popped into my head, and then I just kind of wrote with fury, and then I wrote with kindness, and this is
Oh,
actually what I'm submitting next session. It's the
nice.
rest of it, but yeah, Chanel is speaking to me right now,
Chanel.
and I miss horse life, so
Yes.
thought I'd just write about them.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you. It was a great selection. It translated well to the auditory medium. I think partly because of the accents, but like she's got a real rolling cadence that I liked a lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
She sounds like my Aunt Patricia.
Oh, I love that. I was going to ask you, because I know you have family in Oklahoma, if you'd spent much time back there.
Oh yeah. I mean, not recently, but it was every summer we were there for about a month.
Oh, wow.
From 0 till
Oh, yeah.
18.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Mhm.
There's only one person left, but I'll let you pretend like you're picking some.
Rita.
Oh,
Would you like to go
thank you.
next?
Oh, I couldn't. No.
Somebody else. Okay. This is just a beginning of a short story that I've done. Florence Greenwald woke up on Christmas Day with a pain she hadn't felt for 30 some odd years. The sharp, continuous ache shimmied up her arm from the tip of her left index finger, looped over her shoulder, and circled under her armpit like a mountaineering rope until it rested, coiled at the base of her neck. The first time she'd experienced this specific pain, she was 11, in the hallway outside the girls' bathroom in St. Jonas Catholic School, being reprimanded by Sister Abalone. She had been climbing on empty coat racks, the standalone kind, stored in the front part of the subdivided girls' room until the men's league hauled them out for casino nights or bingo. She performed gymnastics on the empty bars, chin-ups, somersaults, flips with a half twist, until finally she decided to perform a full handstand, the true goal of which was to leave a trail of footprints on the ceiling, sharp and clear like the imprints the astronauts had made that summer on the surface of the moon. Just as she positioned herself, legs upright, to take her first step, Sister Abalone forced her way past Judy Hoffman, Florence's best friend and conspirator, who had been guarding the door. The surprising entrance of the formidable nun, severe and vampirish in her black garb, caused Florence to release her hold on the coat rack bar and fall straight down, suspended in midair by her armpits like a hooked fish. Her underarms burned and she folded a hand under each one to extinguish the pain. Florence could barely stand up, much less catch the gist of Sister Abalone's lecture on ladylike behavior, summed up by the comment, "True ladies do not comport themselves in such a way." Neither of the girls knew what comport meant. Florence listened, rubbing her armpits as discreetly as she could and glancing longingly at the unspoiled ceiling. Florence was 45 now, but the pain was sharp, clear, infallible as a photograph. She marveled at the clarity of it, how it triggered a memory she had lit on for a lifetime, just as a perfume scent or notes of a song would. She got out of bed slowly so as not to awaken her husband, who was still sleeping off the Christmas Eve toasts from the night before. She rotated her arm in its socket to lumber it up. The pain neither worsened nor dissipated. The pain reminded her of something else besides the coat rack incident, a fight, an accident. She couldn't quite place it. She shoved her feet into her new pink slippers, courtesy of her 85-year-old mother-in-law who lived with a pet monkey in Miami, and shuffled into the cold, dark living room. Such an uninviting apartment, uncomfortable, untended, with cabbage roses blooming out of dull brown wallpaper and warped wooden floors inadequately covered by frayed carpets. She switched on the Christmas tree. Its decorative nature clashed with the somberness of the room, making it look more forlorn than festive. She'd always hated the place, but since Jack was forced into early retirement due to his back malformation and not from a drinking problem, no matter what her sister might think, there was no sense in dreaming about a house. The unspoken hope was that one or the other of their mothers would leave her house to them, but the two old women were healthy and spry as sparrows and determined not to die before their children if they could help it. Neither Jack nor Florence had the heart to find another apartment. It would be like admitting that this place wasn't at all temporary. Florence plopped into her husband's old Barcalounger and tuned into the Home Shopping Network. Marie Osmond dolls, fancy schmancy ones with complex hairdos and stiff, gaudy dresses. Now take Barbie. That was a proper doll, one you could dress up and accessorize and couple cozily with a dependable Ken. How she'd love to assemble grand rooms for her Barbies, using tissue boxes for canopied honeymoon beds and heavy glass ashtrays for koi ponds. Florence switched to the Day Show, which featured a man who lived in a house made of empty soda bottles. Sunshine sparked off it like bottle rockets. It was, he said, his dream house. The phone shrieked, sounding much louder in the early morning before the noise of the street traffic drifted like smoke from 2 stories below. Florence hurried to silence it before Jack awoke. When she reached for the receiver, pain electrified her arm like a bolt of lightning. "Merry Christmas, Flo," came a prim, careful voice on the other end of the line. "I'm glad you're up. You were up, weren't you?" Sheila. Florence gritted her teeth. She'd seen her sister less than 12 hours ago, her and her whole noisy brood, a sad, horsey girl, pompous ass of a husband, and a matched set of scrawny infants, compliments of the local fertility clinic. What in hell could she want so early on Christmas morning? "I don't know about you, but I feel downright lackadaisical this morning." Sheila was the type of person who used words like lackadaisical and insouciant, but ate Little Debbie's and picked her teeth with a match. "Cut the crap, Sheila. What do you want?" "Well, if you must know, I wanted to ask you if you have the receipt for Missy's blouse. It's slightly too petite for her." Missy, barely 8 and already wearing women's sizes, was Sheila's daughter by her first marriage. It seemed to Florence that Missy understood she was a leftover. Maybe she just had to grow big enough to get someone's attention. "You mean you phoned me at this ungodly hour on Christmas Day, for Christ's sake, about a stupid cash register receipt?" "I thought I was showing a little foresight. I don't know why you insist on being so pugnacious." Florence pictured her sister on the other end of the line, mouth pinched, eyes dull and querulous. "Sorry, it's just, well, I don't feel so good this morning." She wasn't exaggerating for once, she thought, as fulgurous pain ricocheted up and down her arm. "Well, don't blame me," Sheila said. "You did put away quite a bit of scotch last night. It isn't as if we didn't serve a decent dinner. It isn't as if we didn't offer soda pop or coffee. All those ludicrous toasts to government holidays, Kennedy cousins, the new tax act. Hell, your husband drank to that one. That kind of behavior is disrespectful to me, to my home, to my children. I thought I made myself perfectly lucid at Thanksgiving." That's it. 6 minutes.
Awesome, man. I was like ready for more. I loved how once I knew her sister used big words, like they all stood out in my ear, like perfectly lucent. Did she say? Lucid? Lucent? Whatever it was great.
Whatever it was.
I love the dynamic between them already. Oh, it's already over? Dang it.
The big words with the pick in the teeth. That was just so, like, Yana and I both lost our heads on that one. That was so good. Such a good
contrast.
detail.
I loved all the details. And what's great about all of these is all of these characters feel real to me. Like you all have a real something, you've got that root, where you really connected to your characters. And that's what really comes through, which I really love. So, oh, well, thanks for indulging in that. It's always fun when we have a week that kind of allows us to do that. Okay, so I want to talk about schedule for our next session because I'm going to take June off. Trying to take June off. I will be, if we start up in July, I'm just looking at my schedule here. I will be gone one Friday in August. So we could do all of July and then I'd be gone one August. What is everyone like? Are you all around? Are you traveling? Anyone traveling anywhere that not going to be here?
I might be in Oklahoma, but
you can
still do class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a?
On the 16th, the Friday the 16th, I'll be traveling.
Okay.
Going to Florida, but that'll be the only day I wouldn't be able to get on.
Okay. Anyone else? So do you want to start like right when we get, so we could start July 2nd, we could start July 9th. What's everyone's
I already have us down as the 9th. You did.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. That sounds right to me. Yeah, I think I don't know what I'm doing on Friday, so.
Because our story starts on the 7th, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically all my classes are starting up that first week of July.
But the other Our Stories classes.
All but one, yeah, only one section
Okay.
of Our Stories. The second one doesn't
Okay.
up until August.
Right.
Okay, yeah, all right. So then July 9th, yeah, that's what I have down here too. So,
Okay.
and I may touch base with former classmates from this class, and I may open it up to a few new ones, but I'm gonna be picky. I'm gonna try to be picky. I'm gonna interview people or something. I don't want us to be too big, but just maybe bring in a couple more people. So if there's anyone you know who you want to invite in.
Yeah, Susan coming back.
Oh yeah, Susan said she might be able to come back.
That'd be cool. And Sochi and
I don't know about Sochi. She's like, now that life is semi-open again, like all her kids have a million things and she seems overwhelmed. So
oh,
she had
yeah,
actually
so it's not
signed up
just
for this.
teaching. She's got kid stuff and
She has three
yeah.
kids.
Oh, that's
And
right. Yeah.
they were not doing anything, and now they're all, in sports and yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
but I also, if all of you felt like emailing her and saying, we sure miss your writing, I'm worried that she's like doing that thing like, I don't have time for my writing and I really want her to finish her book. So if you're thinking about her and you feel like messaging her.
And Linda, is she coming back?
I don't know if Linda's coming back this session either. So I'm going to reach out to all those folks,
Yeah.
check in, and even Rachel. I was hoping Rachel would come back.
Yeah.
Enjoyed her, but yeah, if there's someone that way you have vetted someone, please feel free to invite them. I mean, I'm not excluding men from this group, but it's been nice to have an all women group. But if you've got like a super gentle, awesome man, we had a great guy in the beginning of the session. I don't remember, Rita, were you here when David was in class? You remember David?
Yeah.
He was a sweetheart and just like,
Yeah, he was very
guy.
good. What
But-
about Yannicka too? What happened to
I
her?
know she moved. All right, I got some emails to make. Miss you. We're waiting. All right.
Yeah.
So do you guys want to set a goal for next month? We've never set a month goal. Or is that too far out and just want to set yourself a goal for next week?
I'll set a goal for a month. Sure.
Let's try it for fun.
Yeah.
We are 6/4. Okay. Okay, Natani, what's your goal for a month from now? It's a lot.
I'm gonna shoot for each protagonist gets a new chapter.
Ooh.
But I'm gonna give myself credit for the one I already did on Janelle.
There you go.
So
That's
3 more
right.
chapters.
And you have what, 4?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love it. All right, Rita, what's your month goal?
I'm gonna at least try to do a chapter a week. I think that's
Nice.
more the reasonable. I think that under promise and over deliver.
Totally. That's a lot. Sajna.
I just have to go back to the drawing board, do more research. I feel like always come back with more ideas once I do that, even though it's painful because you just step away from writing.
Awesome. Yana.
I'm gonna try to at least have like 4 chapters done, hopefully.
Great. Martha.
I think I'm gonna be overly optimistic and shoot for 10,000 words on book 2.
Woohoo. You could do that in a month. I have faith in you. All right. And so I do still have a continuing student rate. It's 120, it used to be 100. So if you see me put out like a link to try and generate a few more signups, obviously don't sign up via that link and that price will be a little higher. I'm kind of like charging new people a little bit more as I go. So we'll figure it all out. So anyways, you don't have to pay for class until closer to class, but I'll assume you're taking it again, unless I hear from you otherwise. All right. And I'm going to try and come up with some surprises for next session. We'll see what. We shall see. All right, you guys, have a wonderful weekend and month and get some downtime
Thank you.
and some productive writing. And I will see you soon.
Yay.
I really enjoyed hearing everybody's work. Everybody's
Yeah, I did
making
too.
very
I like
fast
it.
progress.
Yeah, we should try and make that happen more often.
Yeah,
Ooh,
that's
yeah,
fun.
that was fun.
Thanks, everybody.
Cool.
Talk
Everybody,
to
if
you
you have
soon.
other questions,
Bye.
shoot me an email.
Yeah,
Oh,
grab
yeah.
questions, read
No
us.
problem. I'm teaching it right now as we speak.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Send it to me too, Rita. I want to see it too. Your
So the class. Oh, it's in a.
no, did you say you had an outline for screen? What was it?
Oh,
For the
oh,
screenplay?
for a screenplay. I wrote a screenplay.
You
but
wrote
I
it?
didn't. Yeah.
Well, you could send us that too.
Okay.
And I'll try and post a little bit in that Facebook group, so you might still see me. All right, y'all.
All right.
I'll let
See
you
you
go now.
guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Jordan.
You're welcome.